Welcome to Starbound. My name is Jack, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Friar and Remy. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes in future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's dive into today's story. General Vukar had no idea of the sheer scale of devastation he was about to unleash on Kryar's enemies as he sprinted toward the government vault, where the SOS beacon lay waiting. His only chance to contact Earth. His assistant, Egut, followed close behind, their synchronized boots slamming against the polished stone floor of the administrative complex, the thunderous rhythm echoing like a war drum through the corridors. Other species scrambled to get out of their path. A group of Xanathi traders flattened themselves against the wall, their many blinking eyes watching nervously, while a gaggle of diminutive Quelvar bureaucrats dove into a nearby supply closet. Vukar didn't blame them. To most of the galaxy, Kryarians looked like apex predators given sentience. He caught a glimpse of himself in a mirrored panel as they rounded a corner. Red skin absorbing light, stretched over a towering frame just shy of 2 meters tall, silver hair flowing past his shoulders in the traditional military fashion. But it was always the eyes that caused the most fear. 2 molten yellow orbs, constantly tracking, pupils narrowing into slits like a hunting beast. Even Egut, a head shorter but no less fearsome, bore the same crimson features and unreadable expression that other species often mistook for menace. Aggression. The truth of it might have been laughable if it weren't so tragically ironic. Despite their fearsome appearance, the Kryarians were pacifists to the core. Their greatest cultural legacies lay not in warfare, but in poetry, music, and philosophy. Nature, it seemed, had played a cruel joke on them. They looked like apex predators, yet lacked both the temperament and the physical resilience for combat. Their vibrant red skin, though dramatic, was thinner than most species and easily torn. Their towering height came courtesy of hollow, brittle bones. Even their intense, predator-like eyes were more suited for reading illuminated manuscripts than hunting prey. General Vukar knew all this far too well. And now as he raced toward the vault, he clung to a single hope, that the act of summoning humanity would serve as a deterrent to the ever-growing swarm of space pirates, scavengers of every kind who had discovered the Kryarians' vulnerabilities and chosen their homeworld as the perfect target for repeated assaults. Behind him, Egut spoke softly, hesitant. "I still have reservations about this course of action, sir." Vukar glanced at him without slowing. "Speak freely, Egut. Your counsel is always welcome." The assistant's voice wavered. "The beacon is ancient, a relic from when we were still a monarchy. The treaty it invokes is over a century old. Humanity has no reason to honor it. We haven't spoken to them in decades. They may not even remember us." 2 junior administrators ahead scurried to the side, clutching data tablets and bowing. Vukar gave a quick nod but pressed on. "The humans will come," he said simply, paused only briefly before continuing down the hall, Egut close behind. "But sir, how can you be so sure?" the assistant pressed, his voice tinged with unease. "We severed all ties when we left the Galactic Council. We chose isolation, even from our closest allies. Why would they come now?" "They will come," Vukar said again, more firmly. What he didn't share was the unspoken truth that gave him such certainty. Humanity's galactic reputation was not built on kindness or diplomacy, but on reliability. Unyielding, intimidating, and absolute. The Deathworlders, as they were widely known, struck fear into most sentient life, but they were also known to keep their word with unnerving intensity. Abandoning Kryar would damage that fearsome credibility far more than helping a forgotten ally would cost them. Let the galaxy think humans were savage, cold-blooded monsters, but never unreliable. The building suddenly trembled beneath their feet, a low seismic groan that dislodged dust from the intricately sculpted ceilings above. Another attack, likely another pirate strike on the capital. Vukar braced himself against the wall as the vibrations passed, catching sight of nervous faces peering from behind cracked office doors. The yellow eyes of civil workers flicked toward him with a mix of fear and something deeper, hope. They had heard, through unofficial channels, that the Council had authorized the summoning of Earth, and that Vukar had been entrusted with initiating the beacon. Some of those faces were ones he remembered from his years in the diplomatic corps, before the raids had escalated and all Krearians with foreign experience were given emergency ranks in a makeshift military. "Stay strong," he called to them, doing his best to sound resolute. "Help is coming." Several nodded in response, some offering faint, tired smiles before withdrawing back into their offices. Planet, and though inconvenient, they were necessary. Vukar couldn't help but wonder how many of the young faces they passed genuinely believed help was on the way, or if he even believed it himself. The administrative complex stretched endlessly ahead, each sector requiring new credentials, new scans, new questions. It hadn't always been like this. Once, this building had been an open monument to Krearian ideals, younglings laughing on school tours, off-world dignitaries marveling at cultural exhibits, foreign students browsing libraries now sealed behind blast doors. Now it was a fortress of locked doors and suspicious eyes, and not a very secure one, given how many pirate raids had already reached this deep. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the vault entrance. The door loomed, massive and silent, 3 meters tall and wide, its reinforced alloy said to be able to withstand orbital bombardment, though no one had ever tested that claim. 2 guards stood at attention before it, their ceremonial armor glinting under artificial lights but doing little to disguise their youth. They looked barely past molting age, reminders of the experienced protectors lost in raids. "General Vukar and Assistant Egut," he said, presenting his identification chip. "By council order, we're accessing Compartment 1. The words hung heavy. Everyone knew what Compartment 1 held. The senior guard, still in the bloom of youth, his skin still lightening into adulthood, fumbled slightly. "Yes, sir. We were told to expect you. Please, submit to the security scan." Vukar spread his arms, calm and composed, allowing the scanner to hum across his frame. Egut followed suit, grumbling under his breath about overkill. Vukar ignored him. This was the cost of desperation, watching him with a mixture of awe and anxiety. There had been a time, not so long ago, when Vukar could have accessed any artifact in this archive with a casual wave of clearance, when the only concern had been ensuring proper documentation and cultural respect, not whether some desperate civilian might break in to steal ancient tech and trade it for the lives of kidnapped kin. "Clear," the young guard finally announced, and Vukar gave a nod, stepping forward as the immense vault door groaned open on hydraulic hinges. Cool, sterile air spilled out, laced with the faint tang of preservation agents and the metallic ghost of oxidized alloys. The guards, despite protocol, leaned slightly forward, unable to suppress their curiosity about what lay within. The vault was a museum of diplomacy and discovery, its shelves lined with sealed containers that represented centuries of interstellar relationships. Vukar walked past water filtration modules gifted by the Aquari, through atmospheric synthesizers from the Veil, past singing crystal sculptures from Nexus 2, and oil paintings from old Earth that seemed to shift depending on the viewer's mood. These were not just objects, they were stories, treaties, memories. And at the end of the vault, glowing faintly under containment fields and layered security, stood Compartment 1. It bore a plain label that stood out amid the decorative flair of other entries. Earth Military Treaty, Restricted Access. Vukar slowed as he neared it, sensing Egut just behind him, silent now. This wasn't just an artifact, it was a gamble, a lifeline to an ancient promise that might yet save them all. A communication link first? Vukar held the device with a kind of reverence, his hands steady despite the enormity of what he was about to do. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. "The records are vague. Some say it sends coordinates and distress data. Others suggest it activates an old Earth monitoring system. Either way, once this is pressed, there's no undoing it." The guard, standing stiffly behind them now, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Egut fidgeted, his eyes flicking between the device and the general's face. "If it does work, and they come, will they come in peace?" Vukar didn't answer right away. The stories about humans varied wildly. Deathworlders with monstrous strength, or brilliant engineers with a strange loyalty to forgotten oaths. "They'll come," he said finally, voice low, "and they'll decide for themselves." He positioned his thumb above the red button, hesitating only a moment before pressing it. The device responded with a quiet click, a soft hum building within it as if waking from a long sleep. A pulsing light glowed around the base, steady and strong. "Well," Egut breathed. "That's definitely something." They stood in silence, the three of them, as the light continued to pulse, sending a signal across the stars to a world most had long stopped believing in. Some kind of, what do they call them? Hellgate. Egut ventured, and despite the mounting urgency, Vucar nearly smiled. His assistant's understanding of humans came from scraps of outdated data and wild extranet speculation. "It's a communications device, Egut, nothing more." "Oh," Egut replied, visibly deflated. "I suppose that makes sense. Though, knowing humans, it probably doubles as a weapon somehow. Everything they make seems to. Did you know their eating utensils are literally called knives? And they're sharp enough to—" A sudden explosion cut him off, louder than the last, and close enough that the vibrations rattled even the vault's thick walls. Vucar stiffened. The attacks were escalating. Pirates hammering their capital in coordinated waves, each one worse than the last. 3 raids? 4? He'd lost track. His mind raced with images. Terrified civilians crowding into shelters, parents shielding their young, children taught to recognize the whine of energy weapons and distinguish which ones meant run and which meant it was already too late. Enough. He looked at the red button again, so small, so ordinary, and laid his finger on it. For nearly a century it had waited here, gathering dust while others prayed it would never be needed. But that time had passed. Now was the moment. Vucar pressed down. The button gave a faint click, held for a second, then returned to place with no fanfare, no lights, no sound, no confirmation, just silence. "Did it work?" Egut asked, leaning in closer. "Maybe the power source is depleted, or there's another step. Humans love their redundant safety measures. Should we try pressing it again, or—" He cut off as the device in Vucar's hands began to heat up slightly. A seam, previously invisible, appeared around the edge, and then the top split open, unfolding like an intricate metallic flower. Panels shifted and turned, revealing hidden inner workings that clicked into place with a fluid mechanical grace. Within seconds, the once plain box had transformed into something far more advanced. A small screen extended upward from its center and blinked to life, displaying a loading bar alongside multiple lines of text in various languages, one of them clearly Criterion. "Establishing Subether link. Please wait," it read. Faster than light communication, Egut breathed in awe. How is that possible from something handheld? Vucar didn't respond. He was too focused on the glowing screen, watching the progress bar fill. When it reached full, the display changed again. Connection established, routing to available handler. Then suddenly a face appeared. Human. A woman, likely middle-aged by their species standards, with short, slightly graying hair and sharp, perceptive eyes. She wore a uniform, clearly military, though the insignia were unfamiliar. Her voice came through the speaker, clear and calm, tinged with steel. "This is Handler Kate Mell, Earth Defense Treaty Division," she said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I'm receiving an emergency activation from—" She paused, off-screen before returning her gaze to the camera. "Kridar. Now there's a name I haven't seen in the active registry in quite some time," she said, her voice measured. "According to our records, your species severed diplomatic relations with Earth nearly a century ago. This beacon should have been decommissioned." Egut let out a sound that was somewhere between a squeak and a melodious gasp, his crimson complexion paling noticeably. Vucar felt the spike of his assistant's panic like a wave of heat, but forced himself to keep his own expression calm and steady. "The defense treaty persists," he said firmly, proud that his voice didn't tremble. "Our former monarch paid a significant sum for Earth's protection. We have never requested aid, until now." Kate didn't react at first, but there was a glint in her eye that suggested gears were turning behind that composed demeanor. "One moment," she said, then turned slightly, clearly consulting another source. The seconds dragged on like hours, the silence broken only by the rhythmic pounding of Vucar's twin hearts and Egut's quiet chittering, an unsettling sound like a spoon clinking in a jar of jelly. At last, Kate looked back at the screen. "You're right," she confirmed. "The treaty is still active. All dues have been paid in advance. Clever monarch you had. I'll need formal identification and a full description of the situation before we can proceed." Relief hit Vucar with staggering force. I am General Vukar of the Cridarian Defense Ministry, formerly of the Diplomatic Corps. This is my aide Egut. Our homeworld is under siege by multiple pirate coalitions. Our defenses are crumbling. Earth is our final hope. We have no other allies since withdrawing from the Galactic Council. Kate gave a crisp nod, already writing. Pirates, no shared control, and absolutely no tolerance for interference from your internal politics, Kate said, her tone sharpening like a blade being drawn. Once Earth commits to a defense operation, it becomes an Earth operation until the threat is neutralized. Are you prepared for that level of involvement? The question struck Vukar harder than he'd expected, the implications vast and immediate. He glanced at Egut, who looked as pale and frozen as a statue. Yes, Vukar said after a heartbeat's hesitation. We are prepared. We have no other choice. Kate nodded, the faintest glimmer of approval flickering in her expression. Understood. Begin uploading all tactical data you have. Enemy ship layouts, known landing zones, communication logs, power grid schematics, population centers. We'll need everything. She tapped something off screen. Protocol Hellfire 9 is now active. You've got 30 minutes to transmit your files before we initiate deployment procedures. The line crackled slightly as her image flickered for a moment before stabilizing. And General, she added, gaze steady, voice lower. Once we're involved, this becomes our war. Make sure your people understand that. Earth doesn't fight halfway. The screen dimmed, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Vukar stood motionless, heart pounding, the weight of what he'd just agreed to settling onto his shoulders like gravity doubling. Egut finally exhaled a shaky breath. Did she say, glass the planet? Only if it wasn't our home, Vukar replied hoarsely, then looked down at the device still warm in his hand. Now let's get them the data, before Earth arrives in full. Vukar shook his head slowly, eyes still fixed on the now inert device resting in his hands. No, he said, his voice quieter than before, though no less resolute. That was the response. Around them, the vault felt even colder, the silence heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. Another siren wailed in the distance, a reminder that their world was still burning, still under siege, but something had changed. For the first time in years, it wasn't just them. She said 1 week, Vukar continued, clutching the device tightly. We don't press it again. They're already coming. Egut looked at him, wide-eyed and uncertain. But how will we know? Will they contact us again? Should we warn the council? Vukar allowed himself a single hollow laugh. We won't need to warn anyone. When they arrive, everyone will know. He turned, gesturing for his assistant to follow. Let's get that tactical data compiled. They asked for full oversight. Let's make sure they get it. As they exited the vault, the guards at the door stepped aside in silence, their expressions no longer fearful but stunned, on the verge of awe. Vukar didn't blame them. He barely believed it himself. The humans were coming, and Cryar, for better or worse, would never be the same again. Their stations, speaking in calm, measured tones, some even sipping from mugs as they monitored dozens of floating, hollow displays filled with tactical data. A soft hum permeated the room, the background thrum of machinery so efficient it faded into near silence. At the center stood Admiral Reyes, a tall, broad-shouldered woman with close-cropped black hair and sharp eyes that tracked their arrival without a hint of surprise. General Vukar, Assistant Gut, she greeted, her voice as calm as the room itself. Welcome aboard, Astra 1. Vukar bowed instinctively, unsure if that was the correct protocol. We're honored, Admiral. We weren't expecting this. Reyes tilted her head. Expecting what? Chaos? Yelling? Red flashing lights? She smiled faintly, not unkindly. We don't do drama, General. We do results. She gestured for them to approach, and as they crossed the bridge, Vukar caught sight of a massive holographic display dominating one wall, an interactive, three-dimensional map of the Cryarian system. Red dots clustered around their homeworld, flickering as real-time data updated their positions. Reyes followed his gaze. Pirates. We've already disabled 47 vessels. Minimal resistance. They're disorganized, sloppy, but we're not here to toy with them. She turned back, her expression hardening. We're here to end this. Vukar exchanged a glance with Egut, who looked both terrified and strangely reassured. In just 3 days, the humans had done more than Cryar had managed in years. The Deathworlders were everything the legends had promised, and more. barely looked up from her console, chewing something as she answered, 47 left, sir, though half of those are trying to jump out of the system. Jones nodded, then turned back to Vukar with a grin. See? Practically over already. Ground teams are prepping for atmospheric descent. We'll have boots on your capital within the hour, clean sweep style. Pirates don't stand a chance. He took a sip from his glass, then added casually, You'll want to get your civilians indoors, though. We don't play around with precision unless it's absolutely necessary. Too slow, and our drones don't miss, but they also don't ask questions. Vukar's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Admiral, what about civilian casualties? Jones tilted his head thoughtfully, as if the question hadn't occurred to him before. We minimize them, of course, but pirates love hiding in cities. If you've got compromised zones, now's the time to mark them. Otherwise, he shrugged, we assume it's hostile. Fastest way to end it. Igut made a faint, choking noise beside him. Vukar swallowed hard, the surreal nature of this moment crashing in around him. They had summoned the Deathworlders for salvation. What they had brought instead was something far more efficient and far less merciful. You asked for help, Jones said, setting down his glass and straightening slightly. And help's what you're getting. We don't do half measures, General. We solve problems, permanently. Jones shook his head, still chuckling, as he walked over to a console and tapped a few commands. Gentlemen, this isn't war. War is what we had with the Kirel Dominion. That lasted 8 years, cost us 3 colonies and wiped out a third of our fleet. This? He gestured toward the viewport, where another pirate vessel exploded in a silent bloom of fire. This is pest control. Your pirates are disorganized, under-equipped, and overconfident. They've had no real resistance in decades, so they got sloppy. We're just cleaning house. The tone was so matter-of-fact, so unconcerned, that it sent a chill through Vukar's spine. Igut looked like he might faint. But these are still sentient beings, Vukar pressed. Many of them once served legitimate governments. Some may be coerced. You speak of extermination. Jones tilted his head, the humor draining slowly from his eyes. And how many of your people have died because you hesitated to call us sooner? He asked quietly. How many families torn apart while you debated moral nuance? We don't want to kill. We do it because it's the cleanest solution when diplomacy fails. You pressed the button, General. You knew who we were. He downed the last of his drink and set the glass aside. Our reputation wasn't built on mercy. It was built on results. You wanted your world back. We're giving it to you. What happens to the ones who made it hell? He shrugged. That's not our concern. Paths were blocked by precision orbital strikes that had collapsed escape tunnels, and any remaining resistance was being methodically cleared. In the Capital District footage, the humans moved like phantoms, slipping through shadows, breaching buildings with silent efficiency. No shouting, no wasted movement. One clip showed a unit surrounding a warehouse, drones swarming in ahead of them. A moment later, the entire structure collapsed inward in a controlled implosion, crushing everything inside. On the southern continent, flamethrowers were clearing the caves, the firelight reflecting off polished visors as screams echoed dimly through the feed. Vukar stared, transfixed and horrified. This wasn't war, it was eradication, clean and absolute. No trials, Jones said quietly, watching Vukar's face. No prisoners. Your pirates don't get due process, they get stopped. Igut looked like he might vomit. But some might surrender. Then they should have surrendered before we showed up, Jones replied, folding his arms. Look, General, I get it. You wanted help, not a lesson in human efficiency, but you activated the beacon. You knew the stories. We've been doing this for a long time, and we're very good at it. You wanted your world back, and now it's coming back to you. Cleaned. He leaned in slightly, voice lower. But don't ever mistake kindness for weakness. If we had to flatten your cities to root them out, we would have. Fortunately, we're better than that. He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. Still want to talk about proportional response? Is horrifying to you, understandably so. But this is the price of letting rot fester. You don't reason with a virus, General, you burn it out. He gestured again toward the screen where human forces were now marking cleared zones with luminous beacons. This isn't personal. It's procedure. Efficient, effective, final. He didn't say it with pride, just certainty, like someone reciting gravity's pull or the boiling point of water. Vukar felt his hands trembling, forced them still. But they were fleeing, those pirates. They were running away, he said, his voice hoarse. They weren't fighting anymore. Jones regarded him without blinking. And if we let them run, where do they go? Who do they raid next? How many other worlds pay the price because we hesitated? You called us because you were desperate. We answered, that comes with consequences. Egut's voice was a whisper. This isn't justice. This is annihilation. Jones finally sat down, steepling his fingers. This is survival. For your people. For every world those bastards would have hit next. You think we enjoy this? Maybe a few do, sure. But most of us? We'd rather never have to come at all. You think our soldiers like gassing tunnels or shooting retreating enemies? They don't. But you asked for a solution, not a sermon. We don't do half measures, General. You push the button. This is what follows. Vukar closed his eyes, but the screams from the footage still rang in his ears. At the carnage, unable to reconcile it with any concept of morality he had ever known. But another part, a quieter, more desperate part, whispered that maybe this was what saving looked like. Jones stood slowly, walking toward the viewport, his expression unreadable. You think we enjoy this, General? You think this is what we want to be? But we've learned, out there in the dark, that peace is a luxury paid for in blood. Yours or theirs. You tried peace, it failed. So now, we bring an end. Vukar clutched the water cup with both hands, grateful for the cool solidity of it. He looked again at the screens as another camp flickered out, replaced by a glowing beacon marking it cleared. Egut hadn't spoken since the last outburst, his hands shaking slightly as he stared ahead in stunned silence. We'll leave, Jones said after a moment, his voice softer now. As soon as the job is done, your world will be yours again. No human flags, no occupation, just safety. You won't owe us more than what was already paid. But don't mistake that for leniency. We don't come back, not twice. You get one purge, General, one clean slate. After that, it's on you. Vukar nodded slowly, unable to speak, watching a column of black-armored soldiers march in lockstep through another ruin. The pirates were gone, the cries silenced, the fires extinguished. And yet, in the pit of his stomach, he wondered what price his people would pay for what he'd unleashed, and whether peace would still be possible when the smoke cleared. At the casual efficiency of it all, but deep inside, that part of Vukar that had seen too much, endured too much, found an uneasy sense of closure forming. The bloodshed made him sick, but the results were undeniable. You're right, he said softly, almost to himself. They chose this path when they preyed on the helpless, when they made slaughter routine, when they pushed us past the point of peace. Jones gave a small, grim smile. Exactly. We don't do this because we like it, General. We do it because it's the only thing that works sometimes. And we make sure it's the last thing anyone ever needs. Vukar studied the Admiral, a man who looked as unremarkable as any shopkeeper on Kridar, yet wielded more destructive power than entire governments. But how? How are you like this? You look so harmless. The question slipped out before he could stop it, but Jones didn't seem offended. Because we come from Earth, he replied, like it was the most obvious answer in the universe. He leaned on the command chair again, eyes steady. You evolved to look dangerous, so no one would fight you. We evolved to be dangerous, because everything did fight us. Every day on Earth was survival. We got good at it. Vukar turned his gaze back to the screens. Camps cleared, cities secured, pirates annihilated. The operation continued with relentless precision. Watching it now, it felt less like a war and more like watching filth being scrubbed from a sacred place. Kridar was being cleansed, by monsters perhaps, but they were his monsters now. How much longer, he asked at last, his voice quieter than before. 3 days, maybe 4, for full ground clearance. Another day or so for confirmation sweeps. Call it a week. Total Jones replied with a shrug. Like it was nothing. Just like we promised a week. Vukar echoed silently in his mind, a single week to undo years of suffering. A week to reclaim a world bled dry by raiders and fear. The efficiency of it all staggered him. What do we owe you? He asked at last, bracing himself for some impossible demand of future debt. This people might never be able to repay, but Johns just grinned that easygoing human smile. Nothing, he said. The old king paid usefully years ago. Honestly, you're doing us a favor. The boys needed a proper live fire. Oh, pan pirates are good fun. Keeps everyone sharp. Funit was an exercise to them. The salvation of Krya reduced to target practice, and yet how could he complain when it was working, when his world was being saved by these terrifyingly competent predators? Vukar glanced back at the display. More camps overrun, more strongholds, silent, more red dots blinking out of existence. Thank you for your kindness, he said at last, and meant it with all the sincerity he could muster. Jones waved a hand, dismissively. Don't mention it, seriously don't. We've got a reputation to uphold. Can't have folks thinking humanity's gone soft. Another pirate vessel lit up the dark beyond the viewport, and Vukar could only watch in awed silence as monsters in human skin brought peace to his people. Reduced to glittering debris in mere seconds. Vukar knew then with absolute certainty that the galaxy need not ever wonder if humanity had gone soft. The Deathworlders had returned to Kryar, and they had delivered their promise with terrifying precision. No mercy, no hesitation, only total annihilation of the threat, exactly as advertised.